For centuries, history said this was a decisive battle, a clash of chariots, a clear winner. That story is wrong. What happened between Egypt and the Hittites was not a victory. It was something far more unusual for the ancient world. On this channel, we don't just retell famous battles, we examine the systems behind them, the decisions, restraints, and structures that shaped history quietly, often long before the first arrow was fired. This isn't just a story about war between two Bronze Age empires. It's about why one empire did not destroy the other and why, instead of conquest, they chose something almost unheard of. Because when Egypt and the Hittite Empire collided, the most important outcome wasn't who won the battlefield. It was why the war ended without annihilation. By the 14th century BCE, the eastern Mediterranean was crowded with power. Trade routes connected Anatolia, the Levant, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Copper flowed south, tin flowed west, grain moved everywhere. This was the Bronze Age system, and like all systems it created pressure. Egypt ruled from the Nile, wealthy and ancient. Its power came from agriculture, stability, and tradition. The pharaoh was not just a king, but a god in motion. To the north, across the mountains of Anatolia, rose the Hittite Empire, younger, more aggressive, more adaptable. Its strength came from organization, treaties, and military innovation. These two powers did not seek war immediately. They sought influence. Between them lay the Levant, a corridor of city-states, ports, and trade hubs. Places like Kadesh, Amaru, Ugarit. Control of these regions meant wealth, security, and leverage. Losing them meant exposure. For decades, influence shifted quietly. A city would swear loyalty to Egypt, then defect to the Hittites, then return to Egypt again, not through invasion, through diplomacy, pressure, and promises. This was not chaos, it was balance, but balance never lasts forever. The turning point came under a young Egyptian pharaoh, Ramesses II. He inherited not just a throne, but a problem. Egypt's northern authority was slipping. Hittite vassals were encroaching southward. Kadesh, the key fortress on the Orontes River, had changed sides. For Ramesses, this was not just strategic, it was symbolic. A pharaoh who failed to defend Egypt's borders was a pharaoh whose legitimacy weakened, so he marched north. What made this moment different was not ambition. It was confidence. Ramesses believed speed would compensate for caution. He divided his army into multiple divisions, moving fast through hostile territory. The Hittites were watching. Their king Muwatalli II did not rush. He waited, and that restraint mattered. Near Kadesh, intelligence failed. Egyptian scouts, possibly bribed, reported that the Hittite army was far away. Ramesses advanced too far, too fast. His divisions were spread out. His camp was vulnerable. Then the Hittite chariots emerged, not as a charge of glory, but as a calculated strike against logistics and cohesion. The Hittite army did not seek spectacle, it sought disruption. Egyptian formations broke. Supply lines collapsed. Ramesses himself was nearly captured. This is often told as a moment of heroic reversal, a lone pharaoh standing firm, but that interpretation misses the point. What saved the Egyptian army was not bravery, it was structure. Reserve units arrived. Allied forces reinforced the line. The army regrouped, and the Hittites did something unexpected. They did not finish the destruction, they withdrew. Not because they were weak, but because they understood the limits of victory. A complete annihilation would expose them elsewhere. Assyria was rising in the east. Internal rivals watched for weakness. Winning a battle was not worth losing an empire. After Kadesh, the war did not end, but it changed. Campaigns continued. Borders shifted slightly, then shifted back. Neither side achieved decisive dominance. And slowly, something rare occurred. Both empires recognized reality. Egypt could not permanently control northern Syria. The Hittites could not push deep into the Nile sphere. Logistics made it impossible. Distance made it fragile. Rebellion made it costly. So instead of escalating, they negotiated. Years later, Egypt and the Hittite Empire signed a treaty, not a temporary truce, a formal, written peace agreement. It included borders, mutual defense clauses, extradition terms. It treated the other side not as an enemy to be crushed, but as a permanent power to be managed. This was not weakness. It was strategic maturity. This treaty did something unprecedented. It stabilized the Bronze Age system. Trade resumed. Diplomacy expanded. Royal marriages reinforced trust. For nearly a century, the Eastern Mediterranean avoided superpower war, and that restraint mattered more than any battlefield victory. Because when the Bronze Age collapsed generations later through climate stress, migration, and systemic failure, it was not because Egypt and the Hittites destroyed each other. Their decision to stop fighting preserved stability long enough for culture, law, and diplomacy to advance. The idea that peace could be formalized between equals did not vanish. It echoed forward, into Assyrian treaties, into Persian imperial administration, into Roman diplomacy. The real legacy of the Hittite-Egyptian wars was not the clash of chariots, it was the recognition of limits. History often celebrates conquest, but survival is usually built on restraint. The war between Egypt and the Hittites reminds us that the most powerful decision is sometimes to stop. If you want more stories about the systems behind history, the moments where discipline shaped the future, consider subscribing, and tell me in the comments which forgotten clash of empires should be explored next.